Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of how election results become official. We're looking at a recent Canadian federal election, using a news article about how some results changed after validation by Elections Canada.
Yeah, it's a fascinating process.
So our mission today, really, is to understand why those first numbers you see on election night might shift and what systems are in place, especially when the races are super close.
Exactly. People often take those election night figures as final, but there's this whole crucial verification step afterwards. We'll dig into why they differ.
Okay, perfect example here.
Right.
The riding of Terrebonne. Election night, it looked like the Liberal challenger was winning by just 35 votes.
Tiny margin.
Right. But then the validated results came out, and it flipped. The Bloc Québécois incumbent actually won by 44 votes.
Yeah, that's quite a turnaround, and it really highlights why we have this distinction between preliminary and validated results.
So why do those preliminary numbers sometimes change? What's going on there?
Well, a lot of it comes down to how the initial results are gathered. They're often phoned in from polling stations, quickly.
Okay, speed over precision initially.
Kind of, and then that data gets manually typed into the central results system. So you can imagine there's potential for simple human error.
Like mishearing a number on the phone or a typo.
Exactly. Someone might hear 71 as 17 or just hit the wrong key. It happens.
So the validation process is where they catch that stuff. How does that work?
Right. So within about a week, the returning officer for the writing does this check. They physically take the official statements of the vote. These are signed documents from each ballot box, each polling station.
The official paper record.
Precisely. And they meticulously compare those numbers against what was entered into the system on election night. It's designed specifically to catch those transcription errors or any discrepancies.
Makes sense. And in Terrebonne, that final 44-vote difference,
Yeah.
that automatically triggers something else, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It triggers an automatic judicial recount.
Because it's so close.
Exactly. The rule is, if the difference is less than 1/1000th of the total valid votes cast in the writing, it automatically goes to a judge for a recount.
1/1000th. That's incredibly small.
It really is. It sort of underscores that principle that every vote counts, and when it's that close, you need that extra layer of judicial review to be absolutely certain.
Okay, so that's the automatic route. But can candidates ask for a recount if it's not quite that close but still tight?
Yes, they can. Within 4 days after the validation is finished, a candidate, or actually even just a regular voter, can apply to a judge for a recount.
But they can't just ask because they lost, right?
No. They need to provide some evidence. They have to show the judge there's a reason to believe ballots were counted incorrectly or maybe improperly rejected or, some other kind of irregularity happened that might have affected the result.
Got it. So there are multiple checks. And Terrebonne, while maybe the most dramatic flip, wasn't the only squeaker in this election, was it?
No, not at all. The article mentions a couple others. Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, that was decided by just 12 votes for the Liberals.
12 votes. Wow.
Yeah, and then Nunavut, the NDP incumbent, held on, but only by 77 votes. So definitely some nail-biters across the country.
And often in these really close races, it's things like the advance polls or the special ballots, the mail-ins, that really make the difference, since they're counted a bit later.
Absolutely. Those counts come in after the Election Day rush, and especially when the initial margin is thin, those batches of votes can definitely swing the final result one way or the other.
So the big takeaway here for you listening is that election results are really a process. Those first numbers are preliminary, and the validation, potential recounts. These are all built-in parts of ensuring accuracy, especially important when things are tight.
It really shows the importance of these verification steps for, the integrity of the whole democratic system.
Yeah.
And maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Think about what it means when governments hang in the balance based on races decided by just a handful of votes. What does that say about maybe political stability or how parties have to operate?
Right, and when single votes are clearly decisive in multiple places, what does that tell us about, the political landscape today? Deep division or maybe super high engagement in certain areas? Something to consider.